All right, so all right, so here we go. We're gonna try this thing again. I've been having some trouble with the stream monster. He keep kicking me off. I guess yeah, the stream monster keep kicking me off, and so anyway, I am still working on the project. I'm still working on is trauma from darkness to light, healing through. Should be video 4. Now I started about 10, 15 minutes ago, and what happened was actually like 30 minutes ago, and I got like kicked off after like 5 minutes and 3 seconds. So that video is still out there. If you see that one, you want to look at, well, I'm gonna try to get it off YouTube before anybody noticed it. But this is a redub. This is starting all over that one. And like I said, it's trauma from darkness to light. And I'm identifying the point here that I'm making is, oh, let me say this too. So what happened was on the 27th, I had also started a video. I got like 39 minutes into it and got somehow kicked off the internet. Yeah, I got kicked off right from the video from the internet monster. He kicked me off, and I had like 39 minutes, and I went back over that and I listened to it, and that's titled 3 Commentary 3. This is Commentary 4, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick back up on the I'm gonna piggyback on the end of that one that we lost connection on, and then we gonna go from there. All right, I'm waiting to see if the internet monster gonna interfere again. You know, I might be talking about some deep stuff. The internet monster he don't like or she don't like or whatever it is. So today is the 29th of November. It is about 8:17 in the evening, Indianapolis time, Midwestern time. And so where I left off on the one on Thanksgiving Day, when I had got like 39 minutes into it, I was talking about denial and the two aspects of denial. The simple denial, where the individual just talks about where they just have a flat out denial, and or they just deny something, deny a reality or a truth. That's all denial is denying an obvious reality or an obvious truth, you know, basically a fact in the here and now. And then the other one is complex denial. Complex denial is more subtle than simple denial. Complex denial is like a system. It's a denial system. Whereas in simple denial, the individual, what they'll do is they'll just like deny something flat out. Person might say, hey, you might say, hey, Sammy, you know, I think you have a problem with drinking because you know, every day you drink a pint or two, you know, and you pass out and you wake up and you know you don't know where you are. You don't know that you passed out or blacked out, and when you were in the blackout process, you know, you had several fights. You know, you used the bathroom on yourself, threw up on yourself, and I may or may not remember that, but I'll say, well, I ain't got no problem. I ain't got, you know, I'm not that bad. I'm not that bad. I don't care what you say. And I just deny it. Whereas And whereas denial complex as in a system, you could say, hey, Suni, you give me the same scenario about, drinking, like, when you drink, you drink like 2 pints a day, and, you pass out, and before you pass out, you got into a lot of fights with people, you vomited, defecated all over yourself. And then I'll say something like, well, yeah, I know I got a problem, but I'm not bad as John Doe over there because, he drinks a fifth. and he goes to the hospital. So making the most obvious comparisons to either rationalize or rationalize, or just just take what you're saying about me and then just basically I'll take it to a whole nother level of denial. So that's basically the denial system. Now, let me say where I'm going with this, starting off with this denial. In the recovery phase, there's 5 levels of recovery for the recovery. And I'll say for and not of, for recovery. So there are certain things you must do for recovery. And usually where the individual starts off, they start off at denial. They will deny their own addiction, and they will deny their own usage or minimize their own usage, whatever it is, whether it's food, whether it's drug use, or alcohol use, or gambling, or promiscuous sexual behavior, or people that like to power trip or love drama, So basically what we see 4. So these are the 4 levels of the recovery phase. Now, after denial is admittance. And a person might, like I used in the latter example, they might even admit that they do have a problem. They might say, well, yeah, I do have a problem, yeah, but like I said, I'm not that bad. They'll tend to minimize it. Now, but they will admit it. They will admit it. And they will tend to go from back and forth, from denial to admittance, from denial to admittance. And either they're going to stay on one of the 2 places. Either they're going to maintain their denial, or they're going to go on to the next phase of admitting that they have a problem. Now, understand this. Just because the individual admit that they have a problem don't mean that they're ready to do something about it. No, they just admitting it. They just admitting a fact or a reality. They're out of denial. Yeah, I overeat. Yeah, I drink a lot. Yeah, I sell dope and I ruin other people's lives, but I like the power that I have over people. Yeah, I'm a sex addict. Yeah, but I just like to feel good. So there's different types of rationale that comes in between there. But however, the point that I'm trying to make is that they will actually level off in their acceptance. Now, moving on, after the admittance is the acceptance phase, where they pass denial, they pass admittance, and they accept it. And they'll say, not only do I admit it, but yeah, this is me. They'll say, this is me, this is my behavior. It doesn't mean that they're ready to do something about it. Now, one thing going between each phase, an individual can go from the admittance to the acceptance, to the admittance to the acceptance, because at some point, they may not even believe that it's even them. They'll blame it on something else, the devil, a jinn. They'll blame it on anything, but they would not accept full responsibility. They'll accept some responsibility. Now, here's the thing with that. if a person is not accepting full responsibility, what has happened inside that program is a reservation. Somewhere they have a reservation. And inside the reservation, what they're saying is that, well, and this is the acceptance phase. Well, it's not really me, which they're admitting, but it's something else. So until a person can completely admit, 100% admit and accept that it's them, then the next phase, which is the surrender phase, they will not have a full surrender. And inside the surrender phase is where the individual, the addict or the alcoholic, will at some point, they are ready. They are ready. They are at the threshold of recovery. They're at the surrender phase. And when you're at the surrender phase, you've admitted, you've accepted, you have surrendered. Excuse me, you have admitted, you've come out of denial. You have admitted your dilemma or your reality. And you have accepted it. Full responsibility, no if, no ands, no buts, no comparisons. And then you've surrendered. Now, surrender takes it to a whole nother level. When a person say, I surrender, what they're saying at this point is they're feeling enough, check this out, shame and guilt about what they're doing, that they're ready to move on and get into a solution. And they're open. Their mind is wide open for a solution to their reality and what they're experiencing. I got a little tea here. I'm drinking. I drink that tea before I get cold, man. But that's some good tea, though. So at the surrender, now another thing that's happening at the surrender phase, a certain amount of peace have come over them. They're experiencing what is called serenity. Why? Because hope is at their horizon. In denial, there is no hope. There's no hope inside of denial. None. Because you're in denial that you have a problem. And then at the next level, which is admittance, admittance brings hope a little closer to the horizon. It's not in view, but it's coming. Another requirement has to be met. And that requirement comes with acceptance. Now, once I accept my dilemma, my reality, the way it is, what I'm saying is that shame and the guilt I am beginning to experience on different levels. Now, there are 4 levels, like I said in previous videos. There is the mental, the physical, the spiritual, and the emotional levels. These are what makes up the human. Yeah, mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional. And what I said about the mental is just the way you think. It has nothing to do with with the individual's intelligence. It's just the way the person thinks. And the emotional part is the feelings that attach them to the addiction. And that'll be manifested in the physical expression of the addiction. And what's the physical expression? The drugs, the gambling, the overeating, the promiscuous sexual behavior, the need to be in control, or drama, or power tripping. These are physical, and there are more. These are physical manifestations of what? Of the mental aspect of the disease. These are the physical. These are the physical, or what we can see, how we see the disease is manifested inside the physical part. And understand that an individual can have more than one symptom. They can have more than alcohol. They can have more than drugs. They can have more than sex. They can have more than overeating. They can have more than gambling. They can have more than the need for drama in their lives. And then in the last phase, so now we have to surrender phase, where they say, okay, they acknowledge, okay, oh, I left one out. The spiritual, the individual is affected on the spiritual level. And now I understand what I said about the spiritual level. The spiritual level is not, in this sense, in this case, a person's religion or philosophical view. In this aspect, in the recovery aspect, spirituality has damn near nothing to do with the person's religion or their physical views. Sorry. What it has to do with, very simply, is their energy, or energetically, the energy that they carry. That's what it has to do with. Now, that being said, energetically, you can connect with anything else. You can connect your energy with anything else. And then as we go on, we'll see. We're going to see how these four makeups of the human being, how as applied to the recovery, and coming from the darkness into the light, coming from the darkness of denial, which is set in by another situation that I didn't talk about, but I'm about to talk about right now. And that's called trauma. I introduced trauma early on. And matter of fact, the name of this piece is this segment that I'm doing. It's called Trauma, From Darkness to Light, Healing Through the 12 Steps. And we're going to see how the 12 steps of recovery brings a person from the darkness, trauma, to the light, resolution of trauma, and then how the person becomes what? A light worker. A light worker, a worker of light. And when you hear the term light, no matter where you are in this understanding, that's what it means. When I say where you are in this understanding, that's exactly what I mean. From your own understanding of life. Because what's happening here is, based on a person's experience, light is going to mean something. There's going to be, different phases of what light means. I don't want that camera view. I want this camera view. So there's going to be like different phases of what light means. Different understanding of what light means based on a person's experience, because an individual's understanding of light is going to be different from another individual's, because everybody's got their own understanding of the terminology. For example, a light worker to an energy healer may mean something parallel, and I didn't say different, parallel to a person from a Masonic study hall or a person that's reading the Bible, to a person that's reading the Quran, to the Torah, or to a person that reads none of those but have a different a philosophical view. They could be a Tantra healer, a Reiki healer. You understand what I'm saying? So do you see where I'm going with this thing now? Inside the 12-step healing modality, which it is, it's a healing modality. It's designed to reach out to every experience, every human experience. And I know a lot of people don't believe that, but it's just true. And I'm just going to tell you why. For the fact that different people fellowship, different people with different experiences fellowship. They 12-step, they fellowship, and they bring their experiences into the room and into the rooms and into the room, utilizing the 12-step program. That these are where these definitions are coming from. So they ain't coming from me. They coming from people that came in a room and shared on them. Very simply. So after the surrender phase, and I want to spend a little time talking about surrender. In order to recover, a person must surrender everything about their addiction on all 4 levels: mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, coming from denial. Now, earlier I talked about trauma. And when I talked about trauma, what I said was, and I'm gonna go back into that again and let me get my notes here, because I want to talk about trauma. Now, understanding that, what is trauma? Trauma is a deeply distressing or disturbing experience. It's a deeply distressing or disturbing experience that changes a person's life. But also understand this: a person could be born into trauma. Well, let me like back up a little bit. Now it's different. Man, that tea is good. It's different levels of trauma. And so and I'm about to get into it, but I want to find all right, so I found the notes that I want to use to go into the trauma deal with. So first I'm gonna give again, like I did in my last videos, trauma, a deeply distressing and disturbing experience. That's what trauma is. Now, it's 4 levels of trauma. First level of trauma is called acute. Then there's chronic. Then there's complex. Then there's secondary or vicarious. Then there's post-traumatic trauma. Now, what trauma does, it induces obsessive and compulsive behavior. That's what it induces out of trauma. So let's go into the definitions of trauma, and then let's see why or how this happens. So microphone, because I notice, like, when I go over my videos, right, I have a tendency of taking my mouth away from the microphone. So I don't try I said trauma is a deeply distressing and disturbing experience. Now, inside of acute trauma, it's it is a it is a one-time trauma. Uh, it says acute is a one-time trauma. Is a one-time traumatic event. It's just a one-time traumatic event, like an automobile accident, or a person could have got raped, or they could have got molested, or they could have had a bullying. You know, they could have got robbed. You know, this is like a one-time event. You know, it's nothing. You know, just happened to them, and they was traumatized by it. And what the therapeutic community says, and these are the professionals, the people with the degrees and stuff, they said through proper counseling, these type of traumas can be overcame. Now there's another type of trauma. It's called chronic. And chronic results in repeated or prolonged exposure to a highly stressful or distressing event, like child abuse, domestic violence, bullying, you know, on and on situations. But one, it's just one. You know, so a person could be bullied all the time. You know, they at school and they getting bullied all the time. That could be traumatic for them. Or it could be child abuse. They could be living in a house where just a minute. I think I got something going on with my nose. I don't want to talk about it yet. Y'all about to see something. Hold up. So inside the chronic trauma is where the individual, like I said, they suffering child abuse or they can be in domestic violence or bullying, these type of relationships. But it's only one. So it's either or. But it's ongoing. It's ongoing. Now you have complex trauma. And inside of complex trauma, what's going on is you have 3 different events of chronic or acute trauma going on. In other words, a person, they could have been raped, exposed to domestic violence, bullying. They could be living in a bad neighborhood where it's just all types of activity going on. Drugs, gang warfare. Gang warfare. Or speaking of that, it could be a war going on. They could be living in the middle of a war-type situation, like Bosnia or Syria or like Vietnam or something. You know what I'm saying? So they're born into trauma. Or Palestine. They could be living in Palestine. You know what I'm saying? And they could be living in a war-type situation. You know, or the south side of Chicago. You know. So they can have all this going on at the same time. This is where you have your trauma. Now you can have PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. And inside that is when a young person, from what I understand from my research, is when a minor experiences traumatic events. And then what happens is, so let's say a minor is born into complex trauma, or they have chronic trauma, or they have acute trauma. And as a result, they develop PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And inside this post-traumatic stress disorder is they develop obsessive and compulsive behavior. You know, they indulge in what is called secondary or vicarious trauma, which results when the person develops symptoms from close contact. They don't like to be close to people. How about that? Make it real simple. They don't like to be close to people. They don't trust people. They don't even trust themselves for that matter. And what happens is on all 4 levels, as a result of the traumatic experience, they develop obsessive and compulsive behaviors. They develop obsessive and compulsive behaviors. And then at some point, when the obsessive and compulsive behaviors kick in, the individual, as a result of the trauma, which affects them on all 4 levels, I got to say, because I'm going somewhere with this. I know a lot of people talk to me, they think I'm a technician anyway. I am. So anyway, I don't like the camera angle. So let's go back to this one. All right, so moving on, my feet's itching. So moving on, as a result of trauma, the individual also has pain going on. And I'm going to use a term for this pain. They have, okay, let me back up. They have mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional pain starts to develop as a result of the trauma. And in some cases, denial will set in. And when the denial sets in about the reality of their situation, it's there to protect them in some cases. Yeah. They will use denial to protect themselves because the reality of their situation could hurt them more mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. I ain't got to the physical part yet. But when I say hurt them, they will actually start feeling pain. Eventually, this is going to result, it's going to come out. And in some areas, they will develop what is called a pain body. Let me say it again. A pain body. A pain body. And I'm putting emphasis on that particular phrase for later on or for another video. So y'all keep up with me. Hit that button, hit that magic button. Because like I said earlier, we're going somewhere with this. We're in the darkness. We're moving through the darkness of addiction, and we're going into the light. So all my empaths and all my light workers, that's coming from the recovery aspect, pay attention. Pay attention, no matter what 12-step program you're in. If you are empath, you need to pay attention to this. Now, what I'm saying is not the only way, it's just a way, right? So anyway, moving on. We're going to move on. So the pain sets in. And what happens is from the obsessive and compulsive behavior, what the individual begins to do is they will self-medicate. They will self-medicate themselves. And it could go through alcohol. It could go through drugs. It can come through food. It can come through sex. It can come through power tripping, drama. They could be attracted to drama. They can have a combination of all 3 going on. They could become, what do you call those people that reclusive? They can go into a reclusive state, or they can be just outgoing overachievers. But however, people with the trained eye to notice certain behaviors will see it. Where some people say, like, what's wrong with little Johnny? Why is he, hyper and overactive? Why is he like that? Why is she always like some drama, a little drama queen? Well, they have something else going on. Don't call me. Speaking of call, eventually I will be doing phone calls. I do have a phone number, but I want to lay out my format first, And we got a podcast coming up. It'll be up in probably when I put about 3 or 4 more, probably 4 or 5 more videos. When I finish this series From Darkness to Light, then I'll start a podcast. But what I'm doing is I'm getting my material out in order to refer people, because I am going somewhere with this. So anyway, we talked about the obsessive and the compulsive behavior. That's what makes up addiction, obsessive and compulsive behavior, as a result of trauma. And inside the obsessive compulsive behavior is basically a disguise to hide the trauma. But what happens in between the traumatic event and the obsessive compulsive behavior, a void is created because the person is what? Ill. They're sick. Mental illness have set in upon them at some form, Oh, yeah. And y'all see it. They say, man, Judy, man, when she was younger, she wasn't like this. And all of a sudden, girl gone baddie. She crazy. And look at her. She done swell up 30 pounds. I remember when she could hula hoop with a Cheerio. Now she could hula hoop with a Mack truck tire. I just try to keep some keep a little humor on the subject. But anyway, so moving on, the pain sets in. The person starts on the physical side. They more or less start an active addiction because they have grown the seeds. They have nurtured the seeds of addiction that have resulted in the trauma. So what I'm saying, what I'm saying is that in a lot of cases, the disease of addiction is what? Trauma-based. It's a trauma-based disease. Yes. And denial comes is a part of that. I ain't gonna say it just comes from it, but it's a component of it. Now, as the person gets older, and the active addiction starts manifesting itself, and that's what it does. There's some other feelings that's going to come into place. And what's coming into place is resentment, anger, fear. Resentment, anger, and fear begin to manifest as time sets in. And I also talked about 2 more. I talked about shame and guilt. I really don't like this camera level right there. I don't know. I'm going to switch that around one day. But I'm going to go here. So shame and guilt. Resentment, anger, fear, shame, and guilt. And also, I like to say, distrust of others. Distrust of others. So a person's personality is being what's a good word for it? The individual's personality has been put together through trauma as a result of trauma, as a result of a traumatic experience, you know, whether it's acute or complex, you know. So now their personality is being put together. And so what's happening is this void is setting in. We got the resentment, the anger, the fear, the shame, and the guilt. That's taking place. And then the person is learning some survival skills. Lying, manipulation, and the skills that go on with that. Now remember I said darkness. These are a part of the darkness, is being deceitful. And where's my notebook at? Hold up. I got a notebook where I wrote some of that stuff down, and let me see if I can get it. And if I can't find it within 3 seconds, I'm gonna let it go. But let me see. I think it might be this here notebook. Cause I'll be like, I'm this type of person, right? I'll be taking so many notes. I got so many notebooks, man, that when I be writing, I'm gonna try this one. If I don't find it, I'm gonna keep it moving. I got so many notebooks, right? Cause I'll be writing. You know, my wife, she said I'll be making dissertations. I don't even know what a dissertation is. I really don't. So anyway, I just say they begin to practice the dark arts. And the dark arts is anything connected to resentment, anger, fear, shame, and guilt. So that could be, well, you know, lying, deceitfulness, and a whole bunch of other painful stuff. Let me see something. I found it, y'all. So what happens is the person begins, as a result of the trauma, and I brought up a few, and I just want to go over some. It could be domestic violence, rape, molestation, a shooting, a mugging, burglary, bullying, assault, sexual or physical abuse, a natural disaster, flood, hurricane, fire, car accident, loss of a business, loss of a friend. You know, these are traumatic events. And then when I talk about the darkness, I'm talking about things that cause a person to become hostile with themselves and the world around them. And we could talk about angry, rage, impatience, depression, guilt. Person become mad, fearful. They could be doubtful, suspicious, uneasy, dreadful. As a result of trauma, an individual is affected on all 4 levels: mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And I said mentally, the intellect; physical is the body; spiritually is energetically or energy; and emotionally is devotionally. Is devotion, how they're devoted to something. And then, so then moving on. It says, and I just want to read this. This is some stuff I had wrote. I said, bringing on the darkness, where obsessive and compulsive behavior is key components of the addiction and alcoholism, total self-centeredness and self-obsession is the darkness as a result of the overall addiction and alcoholism. In short, what I've just described is the foundation of addiction. Before the main primary symptom is manifested, before the main or the primary symptom is manifested, and that's the physical, the drugs, the food, the sex, the gambling, the drug selling, the alcohol selling, the need to be in control, need to be in control, and also the fearfulness. People can live a fearful life. They could be afraid to go outside of their surroundings. Some people are living like a 4-block radius. Now, further into the darkness, what is developed as a result of the trauma, the obsessive and compulsive behavior, is resentment, anger, and fear. At some point, like I stated earlier, as a person get older, they will develop resentment, anger, and fear. And let me say something about the resentment, the anger, and the fear. This is very, very important. They will use resentment, anger, and fear to protect themselves. That will be one part of it. And how would they use resentment, anger, and fear to protect themselves? To keep you up off of them. To keep you up off of them. To keep me up off of them. That's how they use resentment, anger, and fear. So let's take a look at what resentment is, what anger is, and what fear is as far as the recovery model is concerned. As far as the recovery model is concerned. When we talk about resentment, resentment is simply a person who is angry at their past. They're angry at their past. They mad on how they grew up. They mad on what happened to them. So what is defined as the past? Past. And I'm gonna pull this out of one of the recovery literatures that I kind of read. I'm gonna try this camera over here. So anyway, anger, resentment is being in. For simplicity, anger is anything that's let's say 90 days out, 90 days in the past. So let's say it's November right now. So let's go back to July. From July all the way back up to far as you can want to go back to, they could bring up any event that happened to them. All the way back into some type of traumatic event or something they could feel that was traumatic. And then you got anger. A person could be angry. Now, anger is expressed in the here and the now. I just don't like that because my crossbar is in the way. So I'm going to move this camera a little bit to another scene. Bam. So inside the anger, a person is angry about something that's happening in the here and now. And inside the here and now means right now, in this moment, all the way to 3 months ago, and it's unresolved. That's anger. That's anger. And then you got fear. And the fear is fear of the future. Fear of the future. And we'll say the future is anywhere between the next moment all the way up until how far you want to take it to. Now, what I describe is called the triangle of self-obsession. These individuals are obsessed with self. and the resentment, the anger, and the fear. The recovery for those are in the here it is. In the resentment and the anger and the fear phase, the person is resentful at their past. So they're living in pain, because what I just described, the resentment, anger, and fear, they are energetic expressions. This is where they hurt. Their energy is hurt. So in order to get some recovery about what they're resentful, they have to get some what? Some acceptance. They have to get some acceptance. An angry person that's angry at their present, they got to gain some love. And who they got to gain some love? They got to learn how to love themselves. That's why they can never love nobody. That's why they tell you, don't get in a relationship with somebody that don't love themselves. And then you have fear of the future. And then in fear of the future, at some point you got to have some faith. Until you can gain some faith, and part of the way inside the recovery process of gaining some faith is, you got to work on yourself, man. Got to work on yourself. So moving on, I described the triangle of self-obsession and understand that obsession and compulsion makes up addiction, which results in total self-centeredness. Not self-centeredness, but total self-centeredness. And what total self-centeredness is simply stating is you don't give a fuck about nobody but you. You don't care. Not, and I like this analogy. Is when you living in the house and there's three of y'all. And the person come and the person walks up to the refrigerator and there's 3 hot dogs. They eat all 3 of them. Ain't no more money. They're like, fucking, I'm eating all 3 of these. I'm hungry. And then you say, hey, man, well, it was 3 hot dogs. You could at least left us one. And they said, everybody for themselves. That's total self-centeredness. Now, a self-centered person might eat 2 and let you and that other person split one. And they'd say, well, I ain't want to see y'all hungry. So anyway, that's how that's going, right? That's how that's laying. All right, so moving on, right? Let's move on with this. I talked about the pain body. This is very, very important for the light worker and the empath. Because the light worker and the empath, unless they're cleared themselves, your skills and talents, is going to be proportional to how much clearing you have about yourself. And a lot of us is around here lying. We out here lying. It's some empaths out here, there's some light workers out here, but we lying to ourselves. And that's why stuff that we doing don't seem to work. And let me say this, because you have this knowledge, it's not going to make you perfect, but it'll make you better. It's going to make you better. So what I'm doing is, this is not about y'all, it's about me. The fact that I am an empath and I do light work, what I found out is this, and I'm going to take a little time out to share this. What I found out is this, the more I deal with me and the more I learned about me, the more effective in the arts of light work that I'll be. So what's happening is I'm clearing myself. I can go see somebody today, but from my experience, they're going to tell me some shit I already know. That I already done through my own inventories and sponsoring and fellowship. So let's move on with this. Because I need to get to the end of this. I've been working on this commentary for too long. So how does a person get into the light? Now, here it is. We came from denial. We went to admittance. We came to acceptance. We came to admittance, acceptance. Then we came to recovery. Then it's the third one in here. Let me pull that up. So it's admittance, acceptance, and I got it right here. Y'all think I ain't got it, do you? Well, I better have it. Let me put my little notes up. Part of this because I'll be like too excited, but it's coming from denial. Oh, I got it. Denial, admittance, acceptance, surrender, and then recovery. Right. So, however, in between the 5 that I just mentioned, what has to happen? Now, remember I said the trauma brings on the darkness. It's the event that brings on the blanket of darkness. How do we get through addiction? Now, remember, I also said we're affected on 4 levels. Mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional as a result of the trauma. So a trauma hit, the traumatic event hits the individual like that. Well, the individual has to have what is called, they have to have an experience called hitting bottom. They have to hit a bottom. And some people call it rock bottom. And only thing about it, and I don't want to say only thing, I really don't want to minimize what a bottom is because if you don't have this, you're going to have a lot of problems. And I'm here to tell you, you're going to have a lot of problems along the way. And hitting a bottom is this. It's when there is an event that happens in an individual's life that is just, how can I say this? It's just, I don't want to say effective, but it was just as powerful as the traumatic experience was on all 4 levels. See, I'm not one that believes that there's a quote-unquote trap door in a person's bottom. What I believe is that your bottom was not hard. It wasn't it was not as equal to your traumatic experience on all 4 levels. On one of them 4 levels, it did not take. So the bottom, just like your traumatic experience affected you mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, when you hit that bottom, it has to do the same way. It has to be an equal and opposite reaction to that action that affects you on 4 levels. If not, at some point, you're going to have a reservation in your program, and what's going to happen, you got 4 promises coming to you. Jails, dereliction, what is it? Somebody tell me. Somebody send me some brain mail. Oh, jails, derelictions, institutions, and or a close call with death, if not death, if you do not recover. It said that, well, why do a person use after 5 years after 3 years, after 1 year, after 20 years, after 25 years of living free of their primary symptom. They had a reservation. There was a reservation somewhere in their program. It was somewhere that they denied something. And it's going to be different for every person. That's why the inventory process is so, so, so important. The person, I was trying to take a look at my clock. The person has to hit a bottom that's just as equal as that traumatic experience, whether it was acute, chronic, or complex. And it's going to be different from any individual. The experience is going to what one individual might be a bottom or a rock bottom to another person. A traffic ticket could be a bottom for one person. That could be the thing that turned their whole situation around. And some people, and another person might have to go to 2-3 treatment centers, lose their family, all their money, and sleep on a park bench before that experience or the experiences that they went through are equal to the traumatic event that brought that darkness on. So going back to what I'm saying, or what I was saying, is that the darkness is going to be, for the person to come out of the darkness, they're going to have that hidden bottom experience. Somebody could have a bottom, they bottom that had changed them mentally, physically, and spiritually, and emotionally. Could be, they could just wake up and look in the mirror and say, I'm just tired of this, and hit a bottom just by looking in the mirror. Oh yeah, I heard about them happening. So I ain't doing this no more. You know. And what happens with a lot of people inside the recovery process, or coming into the recovery process, guess what? The longer you out there, the more tolerance for pain that the individual have. They have a high tolerance for pain on all 4 areas. Or they can have a high tolerance pain, check this out, in one area, in the physical, or the mental, or the emotional. Or they can have a high tolerance for in 2 areas. But all 4 areas has got to fold. Got to. If they don't fold equally, you got a reservation. You're going to use, and if you don't use, you're gonna experience some other stuff that you don't want to experience as a result of your own self. So hitting that bottom has to be done. Now, once the bottom is hit and you accept that, you're not in denial, because like I said before, denial is in every step of the way. In my view, every step of the way. You have to go through denial, admittance, acceptance, surrender, recovery. It's a must. But what happens is 3 other powers come into play that makes the transition very much easier. And they're called honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. And at this point, do you see how we are in spiritual warfare? Energetic warfare, mental warfare, physical warfare, emotional warfare that has to be stabilized. That has to be stabilized. And it can be. And the people who I'm talking about is not the people, you know, and I'm not saying 12-step recovery is the only way. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying if you are into 12-step recovery, number one, you're in a good spot. Because everybody can't do 12-step recovery. That's why the power that's out there is so merciful. They made other avenues for recovery. But what I can say about 12-step recovery from my 34 years and some days, 5 months of experience with this is when you're dealing with 12-step recovery, you basically have a universal tool. You can step anywhere. But the work is hard, man. The work is hard. Let me say this. It's perceptionally hard a lot of times. Because people, when they hear about recovering people, addicts, alcoholics, first thing they think about is alcohol and dope. They don't understand that you're recovering from those physical symptoms was only 10 to 20% of the whole recovery situation. That you dealing with, so that the 90 to 80% of the stuff that you deal with is spiritual in nature. It's emotional in nature. It's mental in nature. Is that a lot of us is dealing with mental illness as a result of post-traumatic stress disorder. I say that right? Yeah. However, what's on our side is we've come out of denial. We have accepted the term, we have admitted the terms, accepted the terms, surrendered to the terms, and now we are in the healing. In other words, we know how to heal. Say that. We know how to heal. I've seen plenty of addicts and alcoholics. And 1 year walk out the rooms and done some great things because they caught it just like that. They caught it. They say, all right. And they still around 20, 25 years later doing some outstanding work. You know, I'm not going to get off into all that. I practice anonymity. You know, so moving on, and I think tonight is the night where I want to be because I've covered the areas that I needed to cover so I can move on and start talking about other stuff that's related to recovery, like crystals, like chakras. Mm-hmm. We must always learn how to practice, let me back up, service. Inside the recovery process, the 12-step recovery process, service is essential. That's why a lot of people that I met and I talked about, they go out, what they do a lot of service work. In and about and around the neighborhoods. They do service work. And that's also the test because along with service work comes a lot of recognition and money. And I done seen people with years fold. And that's been one of my fears. if you really want to know the truth, man, I always try to stay out the limelight. Because some of the people that I done ran with in recovery and recover with, I mean, you know, they got some notoriety going on. I was like, nah, hell, I'm scared of that. But I'm at a point now, like I was saying earlier, I said, well, I'm going somewhere with this. It's time for me to go. You know, and put my empathic, you know, the empathic abilities that I've been blessed with, man. This is what's happening. This is what's happening. So tonight, I hope this video helps somebody. I'm trying to see how much time I put on it. But I'm going to do a slight overview. I'm going to do a little slight run through. And then my next video is going to be on in another phase of recovery. I will be talking about steps. I'll be talking about traditions. But I'll be talking about the metaphysics of recovery, the science of recovery. Yeah. So it's the traumatic event that brings on the darkness. And inside that traumatic event brings on the denial to some people. They go straight into denial about what happened. And then inside the denial, they refuse to admit, they refuse to accept, therefore they refuse to surrender, and recovery is not possible. They develop resentment, anger, and fear. And as a result of the resentment, the anger, and fear, what happens is at some point, the physical addiction pops up. The drugs, the gambling, the sex, the alcohol, the desire to be in drama, to want to control them and the situation around them. And then they develop the powers, deception, lying, the ability to hurt people. We can go as far as say as murder. Yeah. And then after resentment, the anger, and the fear, comes the development of the self-centered, obsessive, compulsive, and total self-centered behavior, which makes up the addiction. And then a person will live like that until they come to a fork in the road. Either they're going to continue to live like that or they're going to turn around. And one of the decisive events that can come with that is hitting the bottom. At some point, they're going to come to a point where they say either you're going to continue to live like this or you're going to die like that. Or you're going to end up in a mental institution or a hospital. Or you're going to go to jail. Because the dilemma is always the cells. The dilemma is always the same. Jails, institutions, what? Dereliction or death. And that's for real. And then the person, as a result of hitting the bottom, they make a decision. They come out of denial and they make a decision based on what they've admitted about themselves. That they don't know how to live with or without the use of what? Drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling. They come to another lonely spot which the traumatic event had took them to. That's what's happening. And then when they hit the bottom is in proportional or is in proportion with the same bottom that they had when the stress took place. When that traumatic event took place. And I talked about the 4 levels of trauma: acute, complex, chronic, acute, chronic, complex. Then I talked about post-traumatic PTSD. I talked about that. Then we move on. Bottom hit, what you want to do. You make a choice. You either going to come out of denial, admit, accept, surrender, get some healing / recovery. And then if you make that choice, you're going to have to do some type of service work. Because there is a way to treat addiction, alcoholism. And understand that alcoholism is a lifestyle. It's an ism, like communism, like socialism, like Catholicism. You have alcoholism. And you have addiction. And they affect you on all 4 levels: the energetic level, the spiritual level, the mental level, or the intellectual level. Because and let me stop and say this. On the intellectual level, the disease has to be rationalized by the individual, by the addict or the alcoholic, on why they live in the way they live in. And that's when self-deceit, deception, that's when self-deceit, lying is used as skills. And they learn them. And guess what? Because a person put down their primary symptoms, don't mean that they're going to stop that stuff. Because they still have a need to control people, places, and things, and they will use them. And that being said, what makes recovery a lonely place is because the recovering person is incumbent on them that they look at life the way it really is. Life, death, you accept, but and one piece of literature says we accept our dilemma the way it is. And that's why a lot of people ain't gonna like us. A lot of people ain't gonna like us. A lot of us gonna live lonely lives with or without somebody. And that's some real shit right there. Because we have inherited something that a lot of people are very envious about. And guess what we got rid of? A lot of fucking fear. So moving on, you hit that bottom. You face your resentment, your angers, and your fear. Your obsession of compulsive behavior, your total self-centeredness behavior. And then what something is shown to you at that bottom. You go this way or go that way. And if you make the choice to maintain ongoing recovery, you got work to do. You got work to do. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. You know, yeah, it took me more than I want to. I had to take 2 weeks off. But now I'm ready to move into some other stuff. And I've been rapping for like an hour and 20 minutes. I really didn't plan to go this long. So anyway, this commentary is complete. I'm ready to move on to another phase. You know, hit the subscribe button, and because we're gonna be moving on. I'm not gonna be sitting around here, you know, talking about steps and giving a great speech on how messed up my life was. You know, when it's going good right now, it's going pretty good for a 66-year-old dude. You know what I'm saying? I got some. I can't get around like I used to, but I'm getting around. But however, I see what's on the horizon for me, and I'm moving in that area. I'd like to thank y'all for listening to me. Like I said, this is only the beginning. I had to get this far. I'm going to start moving into steps. I'm going to start talking about energy healing, cleansing the heart, cleansing your organs. You know, we about to move on. We about to have some fun. All right, thanks for letting me share.